seem to have, oh, wait a minute. All right, now, let me minimize this. Let me go back into screen share. All right, can everyone see that image?
Yes, there's a green blob in the middle of the screen.
Greens, it's a swirl, okay. So what this is the introduction of the Farmington Magical History Tour. Inspector Elliott Pathways of the Yard. I was asked by my good friend.
Hold on a second, Brian. We can actually hear the audio, but it's...
come to you today and explain something very exciting happening here in Farmington. It's called the Farmington Magical History Walking/Bicycle Tour. Now let me explain.
It's not very good audio, but we can hear it.
What was that?
It's not that great of an audio, but we can hear it.
And understand.
I'm so sorry.
Well, click again, because we'll see if we can keep listening.
All right.
There's a QR code medallion. This one's located on the post right here.
Oh, yeah.
All you have to do is scan it, and it will take you to the city's website, where it will describe this very marker that you're standing in front of. There are 15 markers located in Farmington. This is marker letter A. It goes all the way through letter O. Come join me as we glimpse at some of the markers and what they look like in the city's website. Now, wasn't that exciting? You experienced the magical history tour. It's going to be a lot of fun. Take the tour on your own, and you'll enjoy it a great deal. Pip, pip.
Well done, Brian. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think we need it again, though.
No, I don't think so.
So you can talk. You can talk to us about it.
I certainly will. What I'm doing is I'm making a slight change here.
Excellent.
Okay, so let me explain what I've done here. I've created a tour. It's a walking/bicycle tour of Farmington, and what it does is it promotes learning about history as we go from one marker to another.
Oh, okay.
Now, if you use your mobile device, something like this, you can walk up to any of the markers in Farmington and scan it, and it will take you to the website of an explanation of that very marker.
Ah.
Now, the reason for me doing it that way is because I wanted to promote a couple of things. One was getting out into the community and discovering all of the wonderful things and all the wonderful history that is all around us in Farmington. Now we're trying we're going to make an attempt to do this in Farmington Hills, but we haven't done it that way quite yet. So this is specific to Farmington.
Yep.
Now you'll also notice that there was a need to get people out into the community. That's basically because of the pandemic. So what I proposed, or what I've noticed, is there are a lot more people getting out into the community and walking about, as well as riding their bicycles. So I thought this would be a great incentive to go from one marker to another by offering people an opportunity to follow their interest.
Yeah.
Now, the site itself, when you scan the QR code on any of the markers, not only does it tell you about that very marker you're standing in front of, but it also gives you additional information. For instance, it gives you additional photographs, documents, and other information about what the marker is attempting to reveal to you. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of information you can put on a marker, in spite of this size of the marker. So because of that, there's so much more background information, and there is a great deal more additional, especially when we're talking about photographs and other documents. For instance, at the Governor Warner Mansion, when you go to the Governor Warner Mansion with your mobile device, it could be an iPad or a tablet, or it could be a phone. When you scan the QR code medallion, not only will you read a little bit more about Governor Warner, but there are a series of photographs that you can see pictures of different stages of his life, which is very interesting. One of the neatest things is Frederick Maltby Warner. Frederick Maltby was his actual name. His father, his brother, and two sisters came to America in the 1860s, right around the Civil War, and they came here. Unfortunately, Frederick's mother passed away, and the father could not raise the children and conduct some sort of a job, so he gave his children up for adoption.
Wow.
Fred Warner was a 3-month-old infant. He was very, very small. On the other hand, he had two older sisters, and they cared for him until an agreement was made between P.D. Warner and P.D. Warner's wife, Rhoda. Now, the Warners were children. They were barren. They were childless, and they couldn't have children, so they adopted Fred into their family. The adoption paper was actually an indenture. It wasn't an adoption. It was an indenture. So the agreement, and what's fascinating is when you go to the marker and you scan the QR code and you look at the you look at that section, you will actually see the indenture.
Hmm.
We were able to actually procure it because it is stored in a library at University of Michigan. So we scanned that document and put it onto the website so you can actually read the document. It's fascinating. So what I'm leading you is to go out into the community, discover all of the rich history and the heritage that we have here in Farmington, and get a bit of exercise at the same time. Now, I mentioned to you that all of this information is stored in the City of Farmington's website. However, if you go to the city's website, you won't find it. Did that on purpose. What I didn't want people to do was to sit at a computer and read all this stuff. The whole point is to get out and discover and explore the community. That's the point. So you could go onto the city's website, farmgov.com, and you won't find it there. But it is housed there. This actually was a project that I put together. Me and my good friend, Mr. Brian Golden of the Farmington Historical Society, actually put this together with the hopes of getting people out into the community, either riding their bicycle or walking from one market to the next. What's interesting about the information when you go to any of the markers is there's an interactive map. So it shows you where all the markers are located, which you saw in the video. And all of the markers are lettered A through O. And you can bring up the map and click on any one of the marker descriptions in the key, and it will take you to that marker. So that portion of these web pages is interactive.
Excellent.
So what I invite you to do is to take advantage of this wonderful tour of the community. If you start at letter A and walk all the way around to letter O, and then the distance between the marker at letter O and letter A is 2 blocks. So if you complete the entire circuit, you will have walked 4.5 miles.
There you go.
So it's great, it's exciting, it's informative, it gives people an incentive not only to walk, but get out into the community and enjoy the rich heritage and history that we've all come to share over the years.
Yes.
Are there any questions?
Which marker has Underground Railroad information?
Let's see. None.
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 There is a marker someplace, I think. Oh, it talked about a house that was on the Underground Railroad.
Yes. Now that would be in Farmington Hills.
Oh.
There you go.
That would be the Philbrick Tavern. That's on the intersection of Power and 11 Mile Road. It's a wonderful structure. There's a marker sitting out front, and there's the talk about it was reasonable to assume that they were that was a site on the Underground Railroad. Although we don't know that for a fact because there were no written records. On the other hand, Farmington was founded by a Quaker, Arthur Power. He came here in 1824 with two of his sons, John and Jared, and two hired men. And the five of them came here in March. Actually, we just passed the anniversary. March 8th, 1824, he founded Farmington as the first Quaker community of Michigan. Now, you'll notice I didn't say the state of Michigan because in 1824, Michigan was not a state yet. We didn't become a state until 1837. So Farmington is the oldest community on this side of the county. We are not the oldest community in the county. That would be Avon Township, which is Rochester. It was founded in 1817. We were founded 7 years later. But all the communities around us, all of the communities around us are younger than we are. We are the oldest in this part of the county.
So why are we called Farmington and not Powerville?
This is a very good question. Now, the Quakers that the Power family that were Quakers came from Farmington, New York. And the Quakers that founded Farmington, New York came from Farmington, Connecticut. So you see the trend here. They love the name so much that, let me tell you an interesting fact. If you were a Quaker and traveling about the continental United States and came upon a community called Farmington, chances are you'd be amongst friends. Now that's a joke because Quakers are referred to as the Society of Friends. So you'd be amongst friends. It's a time joke. You'll get up tomorrow morning and start laughing.
Yeah, eventually.
That's correct. So that's the reason why we're called Farmington, because the Quakers that founded Farmington, Michigan, were from Farmington, New York. And Farmington, New York, by the way, is located just south of Rochester, in the Finger Lakes area of New York. Interesting story. I can relay this to you. This is about Farmington, New York. Back in the early 1800s, there was somewhat of a drought. And one of the neighboring counties, they were having difficulties finding good fodder for their cattle. So they noticed that the pumpkin crop in and around Farmington, New York, was abundant. So a farmer came from a nearby county with his cart and bought up as many pumpkins as he could muster in his wagon. Now he had to stay overnight because it was a days-long journey just to get to Farmington, New York. That night, while he was sleeping, two mischievous boys came and stole his pumpkins. Well, the expression back then was they hooked his pumpkins and redistributed them all over the Farmington area. So the news went out like wildfire about the two boys that hooked the pumpkins. To this day, Farmington, New York is referred to as Pumpkin Hook.
Yeah.
Little known fact.
Well, it's now known by 4 others.
Thank you.
It's a great
Thank
story.
you, Inspector.
The pleasure is mine. Were there any other questions relating to history? I'd be more than happy to answer them.
So with the adventure you have now with the video and the QR codes, when will you be able to get to the surrounding Farmington Hills area?
Well, it just so happens my good friend Mr. Brian Golden sits on the Farmington Hills Historical Commission.
We know Brian.
He's a very nice chap. So in the meantime, he has already planted a seed with the Farmington Hills Historical Commission. So, you know what I should do? Let me excuse myself for 1 second.
I see markers on all his books. I wonder if he's a librarian. Are we in a library there? Those little stickers
Actually,
on all the
like
books.
Lynn and I, we all use fake backgrounds. I'm sure that's a fake
Oh, a
background.
fake background, sure.
In fact, I think I've been watching it. I'm sure it's a green sheet that he has up there because I thought I saw it ruffle a little.
I think you're right.
Oh, not sure where Brian is.
Here's a resource. I'm going to show you this resource that is available to you. It's located in either one of the libraries.
Oh, yeah.
Can you read?
Yeah, I can. Guide to
Okay.
Historical Markers in Farmington Hills.
Now, let me show you the other side of this book.
Hey.
Now, would you like to see Farmington Hills again? There's Farmington Hills.
Which one is printed upside down?
Doesn't matter. They both are.
Yeah,
I have to tell you this cute story because when one opens the book, in the center of this book is a lovely map.
Yep.
And it shows the location of all the different markers.
Excellent.
So when you get to the map, the other side of the book is upside down. So a gentleman happened to come into the Farmington History booth during Founders Festival several years ago, and he purchased this book. This book is a lovely resource. About 5 or 10 minutes later, he came back and said, "This book is broken." I said, "What's wrong with it?" He said, part of it is upside down. I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. If you read this page right here."
How to use this guidebook.
Thank you. He didn't do that. Had he read the instructions, he would have understood that this book encompasses both communities. Now, the reason why it's upside down for half the book is because of the map. Farmington is so much smaller than Farmington Hills that if I tried to put all of that lovely information about the 15 markers we have in Farmington,
Yep.
it would not be legible. So what was done was this side of the book is a map just of Farmington,
Yep.
and this side of the map is all of the surrounding Farmington Hills area.
I like it.
What is today Farmington Hills, by the way, used to be Farmington Township. A township is probably the most basic form of government located here in the United States. A township is, ever since something called the Northwest Ordinance. This ordinance applied a standard of surveying. You know, you can't buy land unless you can describe it. You can't describe it unless it's been surveyed. So the surveying nature of all of this country, ever since the Northwest Ordinance was enlisted, which came just before the War of 1812. Now, right after the War of 1812, there was a surge of surveying crews all over the country, surveying land so that land could be given to soldiers. Because the continental United States didn't have enough money to pay their soldiers, so instead they gave them land grants. They gave them land as a means to repay them for their military duties.
Yep.
Now, because of that, Farmington and all of Southeast Michigan, the surveying started right after the War of 1812. So roughly around 1815, 1816, the surveyors filled the countryside. And I do have a map. It's much too large for me to show you up on the screen, but there is a very, very wonderful map in Farmington Hills City Hall. It's called the Orange Risdon map. Mr. Risdon, his first name was Orange. Mr. Risdon was a cartographer, a map maker, and he took all of the survey information that he acquired from all of the surveys that happened all over Southeast Michigan, and he created a map, the most accurate map ever. Prior to 1825, which is when he put this map together, maps of Michigan were not very accurate. And it showed Michigan as a mitten that was skewed, and this was the first attempt at an accurate map because it was all based on survey information.
No.
It doesn't get much better than that.
No.
So, a township, or the county itself, Oakland County, was completely surveyed by 1817. And because no one lived here, they, out of convenience, separated the county into two huge townships that encompassed all 25 townships. Oakland County is a perfect square. 5 townships across, 5 townships up and down. So it's a perfect square. And a township is 6 miles, 36 square miles, or 6 miles square. And if you think about Farmington Hills, which used to be the township, runs from 8 Mile to 14 Mile. That's 6 miles. And it runs from Haggerty to Inkster. That's 6 miles. So it's a wonderful history of how this whole area came about, mainly because of the rich soil content, plenty of rainwater, and the Farmington Township sports many spring-fed ponds, which happens to be the headwaters of the Rouge River, right here in Farmington Hills.
Excellent.
Great fun.
Sure sounds like it.
Yes, Lynn, I noticed your lips were moving, but I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I put my mute on there for a minute or two. I have a personal connection with the surveying and the land granting because my great grandfather and fellows were instrumental in laying out the surveying of Tuscola County.
Oh,
And since I grew up on a farm there, they were given their share of the dirt to pay for their service and whatever else. And so I've always been interested in surveys and things like that. And so your comments really brought back some memories this morning.
Tuscola County, that's in the thumb, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's about there. We're near the base of Saginaw Bay, and the surveying they did was within 2 miles of the water. And so in your 36 square mile township, Wisner Township,
Back in a second.
you know, part of it was underwater. And I was always amazed at how they ultimately figured where they were to come up with the points of reference. So
Yeah, we have the same situation in Walled Lake.
right.
You know, part of Novi Township bisects Walled Lake, and then we have Commerce Township that's on the north part of. It's amazing. What's amazing is how many of the townships still remain, especially here in Oakland County. I mean, just right around us, we have, to the north of us, we have West Bloomfield Township. And then to the west of West Bloomfield Township is Commerce Township. There's Waterford Township, Rose Township. There's a number of Independence Township, which is around Clarkston. So there's a number of townships that are still in existence. You know, there's still a little piece of Southfield Township. Interesting story about Southfield. You know, when it came to naming communities, very often they took the lead off of either where they came from as the early settlers came into the area, or sometimes they followed a pattern. For instance, the two charter townships of Oakland County, 3/5 of Oakland County was one township, and they did that out of convenience because no one lived there. Was called Oakland Township, and the remaining 2/5 of the county was referred to as Bloomfield Township. So as settlers started coming in and they started forming township forms of government, they were actually allowed to exist on their own. What we know of today, back in 1827, there were enough people that lived in Town 1 North, Range 9 East to organize and form a township, and that was Farmington Township. Now, because nobody lived to the west of us or to the north of us, they were attached, these townships that haven't formed yet were actually attached to Farmington. So what we know of today that was Novi Township was called Farmington. What we know of today as Lyon Township was called Farmington. What we know of today as Milford Township was called Farmington. And what we know of today as Commerce Township was referred to as Farmington. So there were 5 townships, and this was all strictly out of convenience because no one lived there. They attached those other land areas to Farmington until people moved into those other areas and could form a township form of government. But you have to have a number of farmers living in the area, and then you have to establish a township board and trustees and a supervisor and all the other aspects that allow you to actually create a civilized form of government.
Just as a comment about conversation, in my relationship with Thompson and Brown Realtors a number of years ago, the comment was always made that Farmington Township, which was everything but the village of Farmington, at the time that it developed and came to be a city, was done for the purpose of federal funding for obtaining money from the government to do the improvements in electricity and sewers and water and all that stuff. And so as that spreads, that's why Novi, South Lyon, Commerce, ultimately, sooner or later, were split off, and only Farmington Hills became the city that surrounded Farmington Village.
Well, that's a good example, Lynn. On the other hand, it's not uncommon. There are 2 other communities to the east of us and to northeast of us that the same thing happened, and it was Rochester. Rochester and Rochester Hills did exactly the same thing. So they maintained their identity by maintaining the name Rochester, but and you're absolutely correct. In fact, Farmington Hills is a relatively young community. Really wasn't organized and officially became a city till 1973. So prior to 1973, they voted in 1972, and then the actual formation of Farmington Hills occurred in 1973. So it's a relatively young community if you think about other communities around us. Just to the south of us, Livonia became a city in 1950. So there's a wealth of all kinds of wonderful history that surrounds us, and it's all a matter of whatever you might be interested in, you'll find something that may have to do with that interest that you'll find interesting to maybe pursue a little bit more background information.
Well, thank you, Inspector Pastways. That was a really interesting talk. I am interested in what your friend Brian Golden is up to with the interurban railway.
Well, you know what? There could be an opportunity for him to speak to this group and talk a little bit more. But I know a little bit about the interurban. So just to whet your appetite, we had mass transportation here in Farmington and in portions of Farmington Hills, what will become Farmington Hills, 100 years ago.
Well, you hit Brian Golden's friend Gina Gregory. I was communicating with her in order to set up this presentation by you. And she just informed me that there will be a Zoom meeting on May 9th that some of us may be interested in watching.
Yes, you should, because this history, we kind of overlap. And so by telling the history of the of mass transportation, or the interurban, as it was called, would be an example how the history that we have here is shared with West Bloomfield Township, and it's shared with Northville, and it's shared with Plymouth, and it's shared with many other communities, Pontiac, and I can go on and on and on, because I know
we'll look forward to that.
we'll have we'll either have that opportunity for you to join in with that meeting, or you are welcome to have Brian come in, and he can give this group a little presentation about maybe the Farmington portion.
Good. We may do that after your May 9th, after his May 9th presentation. That'd be really good. Any more questions, folks?
Throw out a couple of history tidbits. Michigan in its constitution banned slavery. And also Michigan is the first English-speaking governed area to forbid capital punishment. They hanged an innocent man in Detroit, and they found out about it, so they banned capital punishment in Michigan.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, folks. Well, thanks again, Inspector Passways. Just let you know, if you're interested, there will be a recording of this meeting available on our website a little bit later today. Let other folk know so they can come and listen in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks. Well, I'll just end it there, Lynn. Are we good for today?
Just mention to everybody to review the four-way test in their mind or thoughts.
The four-way test behind you there.
Go on and have a good week.
Okay, folks.
Thank you.
Talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Hip, hip.